You'd think betrayal would arrive with some kind of thunderclap. A slammed door, a shouting match, some cataclysm that left no room for doubt. But mine showed up in an envelope, tucked too neatly into a clutch, in a room full of glass and politeness. It was late spring in Seattle, the kind of evening where the sky stays blue longer than it should, and the air smells like driftwood and ambition. Ava and I were at a corporate dinner hosted by her firm, some annual celebration/networking event, held in one of those all-glass pavilions by the waterfront. From inside, you could see ferries sliding across the Sound, their lights blinking against the fading horizon. There were canapes on polished trays, jazz humming overhead, and enough fake laughter to fuel a week of small talk. She looked incredible, of course. She always did. Green velvet dress that caught every curve in the dim light. Hair pinned up just enough to look effortless. A small gold pendant I bought her 3 years ago. A gift she'd nearly lost interest in wearing until tonight. We hadn't talked much on the drive over. She was glued to her phone, thumbs moving fast. I figured it was pre-event jitters or last-minute logistics. I didn't press. Lately, I'd gotten used to the distance. The way her replies came slower, her smiles quicker to vanish. I told myself it was just stress. End-of-quarter pressure. Startup life. All the usual excuses we tell ourselves to avoid looking too closely. The event was formal, but not stiff. A few dozen people from Ava's company, plus vendors, investors, and a handful of plus ones like me. I didn't mind playing the role, the supportive husband, the one who asks good questions and keeps a light scotch in his hand. I'd always been proud of her. Still was at that point. It happened about an hour in. We were seated at one of the front tables mid-program, somewhere between welcome remarks and the award announcements. Ava had rested her clutch on the table between us. She was talking to a woman from marketing, gesturing casually, and when she leaned back to laugh, the bag tilted open. That's when I saw it. Just barely peeking out, the corner of a hotel envelope, the kind they fold over your key card and slide across the counter with a practiced smile. The logo was familiar, Cascade Point, a boutique hotel across town. Not the kind of place you go for business rates or networking. It was the kind of place you booked for the view or the linens or the room service breakfast for two. The flap wasn't sealed. My eyes did the thing they weren't supposed to, scanned it. I caught the reservation summary, printed neatly in black ink. 2 guests, 2 nights, breakfast included. The dates jumped out like embers. The same Thursday and Friday, she told me she was burnt out and needed time to herself. That weekend I had brought home takeout and eaten it cold while she claimed to be resting from exhaustion. My chest went hollow. I didn't even touch it, just stared for a second too long. I remember thinking maybe there's a good reason. Maybe it was booked by mistake. Maybe she was helping a coworker plan a getaway. Maybe, but then came the second blow, and with it, the end of excuses. Behind the speaker on stage, a screen rolled a slideshow, Snapsh *TS from company milestones throughout the year. I hadn't been paying much attention until I saw her. There she was, Ava, in a late-night frame stepping out of a yellow cab in Capitol Hill. She was laughing. Her hair was loose. Her dress was short and unfamiliar. Beside her was a man. Not a colleague I recognized, not someone from board meetings or office Zooms I'd overheard. He was younger, stylish, smug in the way only someone who doesn't worry about consequences can be. His hand rested at the small of her back. They looked practiced, comfortable. I didn't have to ask questions. The picture didn't just say 1,000 words. It said one word, over and over, louder each time. Betrayal. I heard a subtle shift in the room, a ripple of silence like someone had hit the mute button for just a breath. At our table, the man from accounting, Jeff, I think, froze with his fork halfway to his mouth. Across from us, someone adjusted their chair, their eyes flitting between the screen and me. People noticed. Maybe not everyone, but enough. And Ava? She didn't miss a beat. Her eyes tracked the screen, then flicked down to me. And that's when she did something I'll never forget. She laughed. Laughed. Like it was an inside joke. Then, loud enough to cut the tension, she said, "Well, maybe if someone wasn't such a drag on my career, I wouldn't have to carry so much weight at these things." It was casual, sharp, delivered with the confidence of someone who knew how to flip a room in a heartbeat. Then she turned to the group and launched straight into her presentation about Q3 market strategy. Just like that, the moment was over. She had redirected the current like a seasoned speaker dodging a tough question. The laughter returned, awkward at first, then growing. The audience followed her. Everyone fell back into the script. Everyone except me. I didn't say anything. I didn't confront her. I didn't grab the envelope or pull her aside or demand an explanation. I just stood up. I pushed my chair back slowly, made sure it didn't scrape loudly, and left my half-finished scotch on the table. No one stopped me. No one said a word. She didn't even look back. Outside, the air hit me hard. Sea salt and car exhaust and the muted buzz of a city that doesn't care if your world just ended. I walked down to the edge of the waterfront, past the ferry terminal, hands in my pockets. My face must have looked calm, blank. Inside, though, something was tearing loose. Not rage, not heartbreak. Something colder, the first cracking of denial. I stood there a long time, staring at the reflection of the pavilion on the water. I could see the silhouettes inside. People mingling, drinks raised, Ava at the center like always. If someone had taken a photo from the right angle, it would have looked like a celebration, like a victory. But that's the thing about glass buildings. They let the light in. They also let the truth out. And that was the night I started seeing everything clearly again. After that night, something in me shifted, like a door had quietly swung open in the back of my mind, revealing a room I didn't want to admit existed. I didn't confront Ava, didn't accuse, didn't even mention the hotel envelope or the slideshow photo. But the silence between us was no longer empty. It was electric, humming with things unsaid. And once I allowed myself to consider the possibility that she wasn't who I thought she was, the signs began appearing everywhere. It started the next morning. She was already dressed when I got up. Hair curled, makeup on, heels tapping softly on the hardwood. Said she had an early mentorship breakfast downtown. I remember blinking at her from the kitchen table. Toast untouched, coffee cold. "Didn't you just have one of those last week?" I asked. She didn't miss a beat. "Different mentee. We're piloting a new rotation program." She smiled like she was reciting something she'd rehearsed. That was the first thing, the first thread. By the end of the week, I had a whole drawer full. Her phone, once freely left on counters and nightstands, was now always face down, always on silent. Notifications appeared with nothing but the word message or a single bubble, no preview. I'd hear it vibrate across the counter and watch her body tense like a reflex. Once, she jumped up from the couch, grabbed it mid-call, and disappeared into her office. Locked the door. I just stood there in the hallway like an idiot, listening to her laugh through the wall, muffled and low. Her new perfume caught me off guard. I noticed it one evening as we sat side by side watching a show. Something light and forgettable. She smelled different, musky, sweet, expensive. I asked her about it casually. She blinked once, then said, "Oh yeah, it was in a swag bag from the leadership conference. It's Eunice *X. Then she reached for the remote and turned up the volume. That same week, I spotted new clothes in her closet, silk blouses, a dress still with the tag on. All from boutiques we didn't usually shop at. They weren't for work. They weren't for me. Her calendar became a maze. We used to share everything on Google, lunches, errands, appointments. But now, she had events marked only with initials, L, A, strategy, M, lake house, SC check-in. Some were set for weekends, others overlapped with days I had taken off months in advance, thinking we'd finally have some time together. One Friday, I saw a note, B-Day WKND no service. I asked whose birthday. She said a co-founder's, someone I'd supposedly met. When I asked which one, she changed the subject. Then came the car. It was late one night. She'd driven herself to yoga and tea with Kara. She came back flushed, hair undone, the front of her blouse buttoned incorrectly, one notch too low. She kissed me on the cheek, said Kara's class had K** led her. I walked her to the bedroom, waited until she was in the shower, then stepped outside. I opened the driver's side door and scanned the dash. The trip odometer was up by 67 miles. The yoga studio was 5 miles away. In the passenger footwell was a crumpled boutique hotel receipt. Not Cascade Point this time, but one near the lake. I smoothed it open right there under the streetlight. Spa set for 2. Lunch delivery. No room number listed. The toothbrush cup appeared the next day. We had always used one. Suddenly there were 2, hers on the left, a new one on the right. She claimed she bought it because she was tired of our bristles touching. We'd shared that cup for 7 years. Even stranger, she started washing only her side of the bathroom mirror. Sometimes, I'd wake up and she'd be gone. No note, no text, just gone. The garage would be empty. I'd find her in the kitchen 2 hours later, sipping tea and scrolling her phone like nothing happened. She said she needed air, that she went for drives to clear her head. I believed her once. Then I started checking the GPS history in the car. She kept circling back to the same neighborhood near Madison Park. Nothing there we had ties to, no friends, no clients. I drove through it once myself. Quiet, mostly residential. One trendy hotel tucked away near the shoreline. I noticed she started favoriting yoga studios we'd never been to, ones across town or further. Studios without reviews. Studios that didn't show up on her credit card statements. I searched her name on their websites. Found nothing. The cracks weren't big. They were hairline fractures. Easy to miss if you didn't know what to look for. But once I started noticing, I couldn't stop. She began dressing up for virtual meetings. Lipstick for a video call? Heels? A red silk blouse? One time, I walked in while she was mid-call, her laptop angled away, face glowing in the dim light. She jumped, slammed the lid shut, and said the camera had frozen. Was just wrapping up, she mumbled. You scared me. The door had been locked. One Saturday, I came home early from running errands and found the apartment filled with music. Jazz. Candles lit. A wine glass still warm on the counter. Hers. But there was a second one in the sink. Rinsed. Lipstick faintly smudged on the rim. I didn't say anything. Just picked it up, stared at it, then put it back. The worst part? I started second-guessing myself. There were nights I'd lie awake, trying to talk myself out of it. Telling myself I was paranoid, stressed, overthinking. That maybe the phone stuff meant nothing. That maybe she really was tired. That maybe the new perfume was just a phase. But deep down I knew. My gut knew. The kind of knowing that doesn't come with proof, just a cold, steady ache in your bones. I tried to test her once. Left a question hanging in the air. Do you ever feel distant lately? She looked up from her laptop, blinked, then said, well, things evolve, Daniel. That's natural. She said it like she was talking about a quarterly earnings report. And just like that, the conversation was over. I started journaling everything. Dates, times, places. I took photos, backed up location logs, screensh * TED calendar entries. I wasn't trying to trap her, not really. I just needed to make sure I wasn't losing my mind. But with every entry, the picture became clearer. A mosaic of half-lies and subtle dodges, laid out piece by piece. And in the middle of it all, Leo. I didn't have confirmation yet. Not directly. But the name started popping up more often. Always professional. Always passing. Leo said the new deck is delayed. Leo's joining the pitch. Leo wants to shift the brief. Too much Leo for someone she'd never mentioned before the spring. One night, I saw her phone light up while she was in the shower. A single notification. See you soon, L. That was the moment I stopped guessing. I started preparing. Because suspicion is one thing. But knowing changes everything. The thing about suspicion is that it feeds on silence. You don't need an argument or a confession. Just a quiet morning and too much time to think. By the time Friday rolled around, I was done thinking. I needed to know. No more second-guessing. No more playing detective in my own life. That morning, Ava was calm. Too calm. We were both in the kitchen, half-dressed for the day. Her in jeans and a blazer. me still in sweatpants, holding a coffee mug I didn't remember pouring. She told me she had to catch an early flight to Dallas for a closed-door strategy session. She said it fast, like she was reading off a packing slip. I nodded and asked nothing, just watched as she zipped up her carry-on and double-checked the time on her phone. "Should be back Sunday evening," she said, slinging the bag over her shoulder. "Don't wait up." She kissed me, light practiced, not a trace of warmth behind it. That was when I knew. If she was kissing me goodbye, it wasn't for a business trip. It was because she didn't think I'd follow. She left at 7:42 a.m. At 7:51, my phone buzzed. A push alert from our joint credit card. Ecolodge at Lake Vashon, $418.76. Deposit for 2 nights. Listed under her name. Not Dallas. Not even close. I stared at the screen so long it dimmed and went black in my hand. Lake Vashon was an hour outside the city. Quiet, isolated, full of cabins, eco-retreats, and couples trying to reconnect with nature or each other. It's the kind of place you book for a proposal, an anniversary, or, in this case, a lie. I didn't rage. I didn't scream or flip the coffee table. I just stood still, like a man in an empty house realizing the fire isn't coming. It's already burned the walls down, and he just hadn't seen the ashes yet. I changed into jeans and a thermal, pulled on the jacket she once called Mountain Man cosplay, and grabbed the keys. No plan, just motion. My hands moved before my brain caught up. Lake Vashon is surrounded by winding roads and forests that feel like you're slipping into another world. I'd been there once with her years ago, when things were new and time felt slow. This time, it felt like I was driving through a fog, even though the skies were clear. When I arrived, I didn't park near the front office. I took the upper loop of the lot, tucked behind a row of tall pines. From there, you could see the walking paths and most of the lodge's cabin-style suites without being seen yourself. It didn't take long. At 9:28 a.m., I saw her car, the one we shared, pulled into a gravel spot near the trail entrance. And then her. She stepped out on the passenger side, light jacket, travel tote, sunglasses, hair down. A version of Ava I hadn't seen in weeks. Relaxed, smiling. Then came him. Leo. I knew it was him. I'd seen him once in passing, young, athletic, maybe 30, with that manicured startup look. Designer sneakers, smart casual jacket, just enough stubble to seem effortless. He stepped out of the driver's side, walked around the car, and placed his hand gently on her back like he'd done it 100 times before. Together, they checked in at the front desk. A few minutes later, a staff member handed them a single key card. They didn't take separate cabins. They didn't even pretend to be separate. They laughed as they walked. Close, not quite hand in hand, but that easy shoulder brush and asterisk Macy that you don't fake. Like gravity was pulling them together whether they meant to or not. They were led to one of the corner suites, a larger cabin with a view of the water. I watched them climb the porch steps. He held the door open. She stepped inside. The door closed. That was it. That was the moment our marriage ended. Not the hotel receipt. Not the kiss on the slideshow. Not the months of distance and lipstick-stained wine glasses. This, watching her walk through that door with him. Watching the person I built a life with vanish into someone else's weekend. I didn't cry. I didn't feel much of anything, to be honest. It was like standing outside yourself, watching it happen to someone else. I sat there for almost an hour. Windows drawn. Engine off. My phone on my lap. Buzzing occasionally, work stuff, nothing urgent. Nothing that mattered. I thought about confronting her. Walking straight to the front desk and asking for their room. Marching up to that door, knocking and saying, "Smile for the camera." Or something stupid like, "You forgot to pack your conscience." But I didn't, because what would that accomplish? She wasn't hiding it anymore. Not really. She knew the risk. She booked the room under her real name, used our shared account. She wasn't trying to cover her tracks. She was just banking on me not looking. On me being too passive, too trusting, too afraid of the truth. And maybe for a while I was, but not anymore. I left the lodge around noon, drove back in silence. The hum of the tires on the road sounded louder than it should have, like it was trying to drown out my thoughts. But the image stayed. The two of them disappearing behind that cabin door, as if they were the only two people in the world. When I got home, the apartment looked untouched. Her scent still faint in the hallway. The tea mug from that morning still in the sink. A ghost of a morning that never really existed. I walked into the bedroom and sat on the edge of the bed. For a long time, I just stared at the floor, my hands clasped between my knees. Not shaking, not furious, just still. There's a clarity that comes when you stop waiting for someone to prove you wrong. I pulled out a duffel bag from the closet, packed a few shirts, socks, chargers, my passport, grabbed the file folder where I kept our documents, birth certificates, bank papers, copies of everything that still had both our names. Then I walked to the hall closet and reached for something I hadn't touched in years. My dad's old toolbox. Last thing I packed was the jacket she hated. She once laughed and said it made me look like a park ranger. I wore it anyway. Today it felt like armor. I paused in the kitchen, took a breath, grabbed a piece of printer paper and a pen. Wrote one sentence in the cleanest handwriting I could manage. You wanted space, now you have it. I left it on the counter, right next to the coffee pot she never cleaned. Then I locked the door behind me. I didn't look back. The things you choose to take when you leave a life. Not the expensive things, not the things you argued about or made Pinterest boards for. Not the curated home office or the investment sofa or the limited edition cookware you barely used. When you're walking away for real, you pack light. You reach for the things that remind you who you were before all of it. Before the we became fractured into a me and her. I didn't leave right away after coming back from Lake Vashon. I could have. God knows I wanted to. But something told me not to move in anger. I didn't want my exit to feel like a reaction. I wanted it to be a choice. My choice. And I wanted to leave behind something undeniable. An absence even she couldn't ignore. The first thing I did was sit down at our shared desk, log into the bank accounts and start splitting them. It wasn't hard. I had set most of them up. One by one, I transferred half the balances into a new account under my name only. No drama, no frozen assets, no secret withdrawals. Just clean math. Half of everything down to the last cent. A quiet line in the sand. Then I logged out. After that, I walked room to room, mentally cataloging what was mine. Not what I'd paid for. What was mine? The jacket my dad gave me before he passed. A box of his old tools, more symbolic than useful. The flannel shirt Ava always said made me look like I'd given up. The photos from college she never bothered to frame. The Japanese pocket knife from Nate I kept in the junk drawer. My books, most of them. The ones with annotations, the ones with receipts still tucked between pages. Clothes were easy. I packed what fit into 2 duffel bags and left the rest. Same with shoes, toiletries, cables. The rest didn't matter. I wasn't running, I was shedding. When I got to our bedroom, I stopped. It was late afternoon. The light slanted through the blinds, striping the bed in gold. The same bed we'd shared for almost 8 years. I stood there longer than I should have, taking in the silence. There was a wedding photo on the dresser. The only one we still had displayed. Us, smiling on the steps of the courthouse. Her in that off-white jumpsuit, hair in a bun. Me in a navy suit, a little crooked in the shoulders. We looked young, stupidly hopeful. Back then it had all seemed simple. 2 people who believed effort was enough. That love and momentum would carry us. I took the photo out of the frame, folded it once, and placed it inside a manila envelope with no label. Then I slid it into the back of a drawer she rarely opened. I didn't do it to hurt her. I just didn't want to see it anymore. In the kitchen, I wrote the note. You wanted space, now you have it. 8 words. I stared at them for a long time, wondering if I should say more. But what was left? She knew what she'd done. I didn't need to explain myself. This wasn't a goodbye. It was a boundary. I left it on the counter right by the sink. She always hated clutter. The last thing I did before walking out was take the key off my ring and place it beside the note. No door to come back to. No mixed signals. Just an end. I drove north. Didn't bother booking anything. Didn't call ahead. I just got on I-5 and followed the highway until the city faded behind me and the air started to feel like mine again. The sun was low by the time I reached Bellingham, and I pulled into a gas station near the waterfront just to breathe. That's when I remembered Nate. We hadn't talked in months, maybe longer, but he was the kind of friend you could fall out of touch with and still be welcomed like nothing changed. We met in college, both mechanical engineering dropouts turned fixer-uppers. He ran a boat repair shop just past the marina, lived in the apartment above it. I called him from the parking lot. He picked up on the third ring. Dan? His voice cracked a little from surprise. Or maybe sleep. I didn't ask. Yeah, I said. You busy? Just me and a busted Yamaha engine. What's up? There was a pause. I didn't know how to explain in one sentence. So I just said, I need somewhere to land. Just for a while. Another pause. Then, you still allergic to boat grease? I laughed. First real one in days. Only emotionally. Come on by, he said. I'll clear out the upstairs. The apartment above the shop wasn't big. One room, kitchenette, bathroom the size of a closet. But it had a bed, a view of the docks, and a window that opened with a creak like an old man waking up from a nap. Smelled like pine, oil and dust. I loved it immediately. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in the unfamiliar bed, staring at the ceiling, the quiet stretching out like a held breath. Every now and then, I heard the clang of tools from downstairs or the low hum of a boat slipping through the harbor. But inside, my mind was still. The buzzing had stopped. In the days that followed, I threw myself into the work. Nate didn't ask many questions. Just handed me a wrench and pointed toward projects. We fixed engines, sanded hulls, replaced fittings. I learned how to strip a propeller shaft without slicing my hands open. I scrubbed bilges, sorted parts, pressure-washed barnacles off the underside of a 30-foot catamaran like it was therapy. At night, I'd collapse on the bed, muscles sore in a way I hadn't felt in years. And for the first time since that photo on the slideshow screen, I started sleeping through the night. There were no fights, no accusations, no endless conversations rehashing what went wrong. Just the steady rhythm of tools and time. I didn't check my phone much, left it on silent. Occasionally, I'd glance at it and see Ava's name flash across the screen. Texts, missed calls, a voicemail or two. But I didn't listen. I didn't open. I wasn't ready to hear whatever version of the truth she'd decided to offer. One afternoon, Nate found me standing outside, staring at the water. You ever think about what you'd be doing if you didn't get married? He asked. I didn't answer right away. Then I said, probably something like this. Less corporate dinners. More air. He nodded. You staying long? I shrugged. Long enough to feel like a person again. He clapped a hand on my shoulder. Then we better order more paint. The shop became my world. Grease under my nails. The smell of fuel. The quiet of not being needed by someone who didn't want me. It was the opposite of the life I left behind. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest. And for now, that was enough. The strange thing about silence is how loud it gets when there's nothing left to argue about. After I left, the quiet didn't just settle. It surrounded me, wrapped itself around my mornings, my meals, my sleep. It followed me like a shadow that no longer needed to hide. When Ava returned to the apartment 2 days later, she came home to a vacuum. I know this because of the texts. They started arriving that night, time-stamped like a trail of realization. The first was simple. Where are you? Then, Daniel, can we talk? By the fifth message, the tone shifted. You're being dramatic. We can fix this. And after that, the floodgates opened. Long messages, rambling ones, paragraphs sent at 2 a.m., justifying everything. It wasn't serious. You've been distant. Leo is just a symptom. I never stopped loving you. Some read like apologies. Some like speeches. Some like bargaining letters written in a language neither of us spoke anymore. I read them mostly, not all at once, not eagerly. Just skimmed them over black coffee or after a long shift at the shop. Then I archived them. No replies, no reaction, no need. Silence was my reply. I never changed my number. Never blocked her. That would have made it feel like a fight, and I was done fighting. I wasn't building a wall. I was simply walking away from the battlefield. At Nate's shop, I started to find a rhythm. Wake up early. Brew strong coffee in a dented percolator. Pull on work boots that smelled like old rope and salt. Climb down into the repair bay, sometimes before the sun was even up. There was something about sanding fiberglass or tuning an outboard engine that made everything else feel manageable. Work has a way of anchoring you when your life has gone weightless. Clients started learning my name. First it was just the new guy. Then Daniel. Then you're the guy who fixed McAllister's rudder, right? I didn't do anything special. I just listened, took my time, did the job right. People respected that. And maybe because I wasn't trying to sell anything. Not expertise, not charm, not a resume, they started to trust me. One marina manager offered me a contract. A few boat owners asked if I did custom installations. A local club asked if I could restore a vintage sailboat for their junior program. Nate said I was becoming a name. I didn't care about that, but I did care that my hands, for once, felt like they were doing something that mattered. No meetings, no presentations, just real problems solved one bolt at a time. Ava kept writing. The messages changed, first from defensive to pleading. Then came the self-reflections. I've been going to therapy. I understand now. I wasn't happy with myself, not with you. Every text felt like a rock tossed into the ocean. I imagined her watching the ripples, waiting for a splash that never came. One day she sent a photo. A picture of a place we visited on our second anniversary. A rocky cove in Oregon with a caption, "Do you ever miss this?" I didn't reply, but I stared at it for a while. I remembered that trip, the wind, the quiet, the way we talked about renting a camper and disappearing up the coast one summer. Back then, we believed in shared plans, in promises that didn't rust. I missed that feeling, yes, but not her. That version of her didn't exist anymore. Maybe she never did. A few weeks into my new life, I rented out my own bay in the shop. Nate gave me a fair deal. I put up a pegboard, labeled my tools, printed business cards, North Dock Repair, Daniel H. Mechanical Systems Custom Fabrication. Clean design, no slogan, just the truth. Every day after work, I'd clean my hands with pumice soap, scrub the grease from under my nails. I'd sit on the dock with a beer and watch the tide come in. Sometimes a couple would walk past, holding hands, laughing. I didn't feel bitterness, just stillness. I was learning to exist without reaching for someone else's outline to make me whole. One night, Nate and I sat out on the marina bench, watching a small sailboat dock. The owner waved from the tiller. A kid, probably 19, with more sunburn than experience. "He's gonna crash," I muttered. "He's gotta learn," Nate said. "Crashing's how you learn." I smiled at that. "Guess I'm learning fast then." He looked at me. "You ever think about dating again?" The question caught me off guard. "Not really," I said, still trying to remember what it means to just be. He nodded. "That's fair. But don't let her ruin the idea of connection, man. That's hers to carry, not yours." I didn't answer. Not because I disagreed. I just hadn't thought that far ahead. Later that week, I opened the wedding photo again, the one I'd hidden in the drawer. I stared at it under the workshop's overhead light, the faces barely visible under the glare. I didn't cry, didn't get angry. I just studied it the way you study an old blueprint, trying to understand what made it crack. Then I put it in the shop scrap bin and never looked at it again. By the start of fall, the air turned sharper. Leaves drifted across the harbor, red and gold and brown. We started using the heater in the repair bay. My calendar began to fill 2 weeks out. Ava was still writing. Less now. Once a week. Then every 2. Her last message, at least the last one I opened, was just one line. "I don't know who I am without you." I stared at it for a while, then closed the app. The truth was, I finally did know who I was without her. And I was okay. Months later, I returned to that same waterfront pavilion. This time as a business partner, not a +1. My name was on the programs, my work respected. Ava was there too, but alone. Whispers followed her about Leo, the failed project, and the fallout. Our eyes met briefly. She looked tired. I looked away. I didn't need closure. The balance had shifted. I'd found solid ground, and she was still chasing something that had already slipped away. I bought a small house on Whidbey Island. Nothing grand, just peace. Mornings came with sea air and quiet coffee. Ava's messages kept coming, each one heavier than the last, but I never replied. She hadn't just lost me. She'd lost the world she built on control and image. I kept what mattered, meaning, honesty, freedom. Her voice faded like the tide. Mine finally returned, steady, firm, and free. This wasn't revenge. It was release.